On the landing site selection, during the course of preparation from Apollo 15, we actually had 5 landing sites because they changed the sites depending on the results of prior missions. So as we went along, there was sort of bouncing from here to there. And finally, they decided that there were 2 prime candidates, Marius Hills and the Hadley Apennine. And we had been schooled in both of those. We'd had lectures. We were learning about why we would go there, what we would do there. And clearly in my mind, Hadley Apennine had the greatest variety, and it was also the most spectacular site. I mean, there's just grandeur in a place like that. And there's always something to be said about exploring places that are really, really beautiful. So when it came time for Rocco Petrone to make the final decision, because of the scheduling and the preparation that had to be made, at some point you have to decide where the crew is going to go, where we're going to land. And I was fortunate enough to be invited to Washington to sit in on this large discussion by all the geologists, and it was a sort of a debate between Marius Hills and Hadley Apennine, a very interesting and very solid debate. And it was difficult for the system, management, science, etc., to make this decision. And Rocco went around the room, as he normally does, at the end of the discussion and asked people for their opinions. And I was fortunate enough to have Rocco ask me my opinion. There was no question in my mind, because we had studied them both from a field observer's point of view, and Hadley seemed to offer a lot more in terms of what we could get and what the return would be.
Just describe for the audience, when you poke your head outside that limb and you looked around after you landed, what's it like? What did you see?
Well, it's just absolutely breathtaking. I mean, it's, as I think Joe Allen once said when he flew, endlessly fulfilling. There's so much to see, and when you've studied the area and you think you know what you're looking for, and there's much more, and it's so clear up there. Of course, there's no atmosphere, and it's just crystal clear, and everything stands out. And there's such a great variety of landforms at Hadley, the mountains and the rill and the rocks and the craters and etc., that you could spend a long time just looking. But of course, the job, there was a purpose of that, was to scout the area and see if we could drive the rover. There was some question as to whether or not there would be boulders that would preclude us from driving the rover. So one reason for taking a scouting expedition through the top hatch, of course, was to see if the rover would be trafficable up there.
It just must be spectacular. I mean, it can't be like anything you see on Earth.
Nope. Well, if you like the mountains, if you like to ski, if you can get to the top of the mountain on a crystal clear blue day, you can sort of appreciate something like that. The Hadley Apennine was located on the rim of the largest crater on the moon, and craters excavate very deep when they're made. So the theory was that the penetration that made the Imbrium crater may have excavated some of the original lunar crust when the moon was formed. That was thought to be a crystalline substance, plagioclase, called anorthosite. So if that had been excavated, we might find some at the rim of the Imbrium crater, and that's where we landed, at Hadley. So having that knowledge and knowing that this would help understand when the moon was formed and how the moon was formed, it was one of many rocks we were looking for. But we were very fortunate. And again, we were schooled by the best, and we knew what to look for because there are certain unique characteristics of an anorthosite. When we found it, I think Jim Irwin and I both said, there it is. That's it. But it wasn't a lonely rock in terms of its significance. Many other rocks were just as significant. In fact, there's one even older, a black and white rock, which was equally impressive when you picked it up on the moon. And we found a green rock, just a pure green rock, which we didn't even know how to describe. So there were a lot of surprises up there. And that's what makes geology fun. That's what makes science fun, because things you don't expect to happen. You get surprises all the time, and it gets pretty exciting.
How was your communication? Who were you communicating with geologically when you were up there on the ground?
Well, we're always talking to the Capcom, who was Joe Allen. Joe being a physicist, a scientist, and he was really into geology too. In fact, he was a neighbor, and Joe was our direct link to the rest of the total system. And of course, in the back room, you had all our geologists who communicated with Joe, and it was very effective. In fact, during our pre-launch training on field trips, we simulated the entire geology expedition in terms of having a Capcom, Joe Allen, sit on the other side of a mountain when we were doing our training with a back room so that we'd be proficient enough to communicate quickly and effectively. Sure. It was one of many samples we found that were significant. And of course, at the time, there's very little time to do what you want to do. And we were in an area called Spur Crater that was just, to us, an absolute gold mine of different varieties of rock. Talk about a suite. There were many different types of rock there, and we only could spend, I forget, the very short amount of time. So the anorthosite was a find that was exciting. Put it in a bag and get on with other things, because you may, as Joe Allen said, you may find diamonds in the next crater. So there was just so much there, and we were moving so quickly that actually the collection of the anorthosite was one of many rocks that we felt were quite significant.
How about when you got back on the Earth later on then, David, when you looked at it in the lab, was there anything significant? And the geologists were so excited about it, like, oh, that's it, the Genesis rock.
Well, I think, the Genesis rock came from the media. The geologists stick pretty much to what the science is. And as I mentioned, there were many other rocks that were quite significant. The black and white rock, the green rock, etc. So when we got back and got to the Lunar Receiving Lab and went down the row of the nitrogen containers for the rocks, very exciting to see our finds, because they were all significant. And everybody has, the various disciplines within geology, the subdisciplines, all were excited about different things.
One of the things that everybody's so excited about all the time when we talk about lunar landings and stuff is they see that rover and they go, oh, that is so cool, especially the guys. That would be so cool. Take us about that. How did you get that thing deployed the first time? Did they make it easy for you? What was the advantage of having that rover up there? Or you look forward to driving it on the moon?
Well, the big advantage of the rover was that we could cover a wide range of geological sites at one location where you land, which really means, in our case, we landed at 3 places, because we could drive the rover and we could extend our range. But, of course, always on a first mission, you never know whether it's going to work or not. So we actually spent a great deal of time planning walking traverses, because the rover might not unfold, it might not start, whatever. First mission's always susceptible, right? And I guess the greatest thrill was to get it out, turn it on, and it actually worked. And I've got to say, it's just a marvelous piece of machinery because of the way it's folded. And of course, it's dormant all the way to the moon, and nobody really knows whether it's going to work or not from the time they stow it on the pad. So first, to get it out and it unfolds and locks up, and then to turn it on and have it work. Doing the geology I'd been trained to do is so irregular and so undulating with craters that speed, you can't really think about 13 or 14 kilometers an hour in Earth terms. We were going very fast on the moon because it's very irregular and very bumpy.
What's it like to work on the moon? I asked Cernan this question, and he had an interesting answer. I might ask you too. Working on the moon, was it tough? Was it good? What was it like?
Well, I guess my feeling working on the moon was doing the geology I'd been trained to do, and once you get out and get settled down in your suit, backpack and everything, don't even know you have them on. They restrict you some in your mobility. Every once in a while you have to make a check, but again, a marvelous piece of equipment, if you will. We never had any real problems, and you just forget about the fact that you got all this stuff on. You just get on with the geology. And working on the moon was practically playing on the moon for us.
What's it like to be in 1/6 G?
Well, it gives you the comfort of being able to move about without the weight that you have on the Earth, but at the same time it's very different from 0 G because you have an up and a down. So it's sort of a cross between the best of two worlds, being very light and having an up and down, and which gives you a normal acclimation in your body balance and that sort of stuff. But because you don't weigh much, you can, as you've seen, everybody sees on a film, you sort of hip hop along, move quickly, but it's a very comfortable environment.
Now, how far did you actually travel out with the lunar rover? I'm not sure I got that.
Well, I guess we probably went about 6 kilometers to the base of the mountain. I don't remember the exact numbers, but far enough that you're over the hill, out of sight of the limb. Because again, on the moon, because the moon is so much smaller than the Earth, the horizon is only about 1 kilometer away, whereas on the Earth, you're looking at, 12 or 13 miles.